Hello and welcome to every horror movie on Netflix, or actually, it's every A24 movie on Blu-ray. I haven't gotten used to the new intro here because we are standing in solidarity with all these striking entertainment workers in their moral battle against the studios and the streamers that are destroying art. And to that end, this week, well, I'm Chris, and I'm here with Steven.
Hi.
And Patrick.
Hello.
And we are watching a pick from our listener, EHMON superfan Bree, won our charity auction to pick the next film that we watched from the A24 catalog, and Bree selected The Killing of a Sacred Deer from 2017, directed by, how do you pronounce it?
Yorgos Lanthimos.
Directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. So we are very grateful. How much did we raise from that auction?
We raised $115 just from combined Bree's bid and also a couple of donations that folks made on their own. And then we are also going to match Bree's winning bid so that we end up sending a total of $190 to the Entertainment Community Fund, which is a nonprofit that's offering emergency assistance grants to folks in the entertainment industry who are striking and need help with their rent or other kind of basic needs during this strike. So thanks to everybody who contributed to that, because it's $200. It's not the biggest amount of money in the world, but I'm sure it's going to a great cause, and every little bit counts.
You can get lunch in LA for $200.
So yeah, thank you to everyone who bid on that auction. We're so grateful to be able to raise money like this. We haven't made any money personally, I don't think. We sell some shirts, we make a couple bucks here and there, but it's nice that in lieu of us making money, we can direct some money to causes we care about from time to time when the situation calls for it. So thank you all who participated.
Yeah, we've certainly made less than $190 in the entire 5+ years we've been doing this show.
I think we've lost money.
Oh, for sure.
We're like Paul Newman. All profits to charity. But anyway, we always start the show with a little discussion of what else we've been consuming or seeing or reading in the horror sphere. So what do you guys got?
You can skip me because I got nothing.
Oh, wow. Patrick.
I've still been on my manga kick. I've been reading a lot of horror manga lately, as you all know, and I've gone back to the well with one of my favorite, or perhaps just my flat-out favorite horror manga creator, Junji Ito. There's a new collection of his work that's been published in English over here, and I love that they're continuing this steady stream of new English versions of Ito collections over here. But the latest one to hit American shelves is Soichi. That's Soichi, and it's one of his kind of most iconic characters. It's about this very antisocial young man, kind of the black sheep of a family who lives in this like attic sort of lair of his own and has nails for teeth and just cooks up all kinds of sort of demented pranks to pull on his family and schoolmates. The back cover of the book describes him as an anti-hero, which I at first didn't understand, and then as I went along I was like, you know what, this actually does have a weird kind of fun anti-hero type of quality to this character, just kind of pulling all these again very anti-social kind of pranks on this very square cast of characters that surrounds him. So I really warmed up to that character and had a lot of fun with Soichi. How about you, Chris?
I'm almost in Steven's boat. I've barely done anything horror related, but I did make it to the multiplex and I did see Talk to Me.
Me too.
And it was good. It wasn't, I think all the hype had me expecting something that was going to change my life. It's not going to change my life, but it's a solid horror film. A lot better crafted and smarter than what typically plays at the multiplex in the horror genre. So good for everybody.
Yeah, totally agree on that. I also want to give a quick shout out too. I know a few episodes ago I kind of teased that Allison with a Y and I are cooking up a special Amon episode where we're going to continue the grand Amon tradition of reviewing every movie in a horror franchise. We've got every Paranormal Activity movie ever coming to you in a few weeks here, I think it's safe to say. And we're also going to have some very special guests on that episode. Chris and Steven both gave a big fuck no to this endeavor, which I do not blame them. But we are going to have some fun company for that episode. And I'm really looking forward to bringing that to listeners as a little Halloween treat.
That's great. I'll be participating in Normal Activity while you're doing that.
Yeah, and well, Chris, we'll have to come up with a trick for Halloween for the podcast if he's handling the treats.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Well, that brings us to this week's order of business. We watched, like I said, The Killing of a Sacred Deer. And I don't even know how to begin describing this movie. Have either of you seen it before?
I saw it. I was trying to remember because I didn't think I'd seen it, but then I watched it and I laughed at all the same lines. I remembered them as they sort of came up and was perplexed by the same things. I must have rented it or something soon after it came out and had just kind of forgotten about it.
I actually had sort of the opposite experience where I sort of thought I had seen it, but I think it was back in the days when I was still reviewing movies professionally and I got a screener of this and I think it sat on my entertainment center with my intention to watch it for so long that I almost felt like I had. But this definitely was not familiar to me. I have seen some of Lanthimos' other movies before. I've seen The Lobster and he did The Favorite, right? Am I misremembering that?
Yeah, which I weirdly haven't seen yet. But I've seen The Lobster and Dogtooth. Well, I've tried to watch Dogtooth twice and did not succeed in finishing it either time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this was all new to me, and I have not seen any of the director's other work, so I didn't really know what to expect. And I was thrown for a little bit of a loop. So the premise is, and I feel like this movie, we'll get into it. The plot is sort of secondary to tone, I think, in this movie.
It's a vibe movie for sure.
It's a vibe movie, but it's about a cardiac surgeon played by Colin Farrell who lives with his wife, Nicole Kidman, and their two kids who are I don't know, it's a 10-year-old boy or a 9-year-old boy and a 13 or 14-year-old girl, something like that. And he has a young man that he sort of has under his wing for reasons that are unclear at the beginning of the film. And this young man sort of goes, they have a kind of an awkward, he has an awkward relationship with everybody in this movie. But especially with his young little protege played by, what's his name?
Barry
He's played by Keoghan, yeah, one of our three Jokers.
Yeah, one of the new Jokers, yes. And I can see why they made him Joker after watching this movie.
Yeah.
But bad things start happening to Colin Farrell's family, specifically his children. They come down with afflictions that are mysterious, and his young protege might have something to do with it for a very personal reason. But it's a fantastic movie. It doesn't make a ton of sense. It's not like a straight up thriller like I was expecting, and it's weird as hell.
It's weird as hell. Yeah, it's a movie where it's almost as if Lanthimos told the actors okay, here's the script, here's the dialogue. Just read it.
Yes.
Don't act it. Just read it. And I find that so fascinating.
Yeah, in the most distant, alienated way possible. And I mean, you get the vibe from square one. Colin Farrell is having this bizarre conversation with his fellow doctor about their watches and watch bands. And they're just talking like they're aliens trying to make sense of watches for the first time, practically.
Yeah,
and that's the way people talk to each other pretty much throughout the entire movie, with the semi-exception of the Keoghan character, who feels rightfully so like he comes off a separate planet kind of from everybody else.
I've never seen anything like it, and I don't really know how to describe it the way they're talking. and I wish we had like prepared a bit where we did the whole episode like this.
Oh, that would have been good.
But it's all just very flat. There's no subtext in this movie. Everybody says what they're thinking and feeling pretty directly, which is very interesting. And it's a format choice that Lanthimos has made. And I don't know, is this how his other movies are?
Yeah, well, the ones I've seen, The Lobster especially.
Okay.
Also with Colin Farrell.
It's almost like watching The West Wing or something, where there's like people who are a little too snappy and they're going through the dialogue in a scene, but it's flat. It's it's really hard to describe without playing a clip. We probably won't play a clip, but
it's very intentionally stagey, and it's even beyond the direction, the performance, like it's written in very awkward ways, sometimes very formal ways that no one would actually speak in real life.
Right. This is like, my notes are going to be important for this episode, for me at least, because I just wrote down so many lines. I mean, even without context, like Colin Farrell says, I believe to the Barry Keoghan character, he just says very flatly, when asked how he's doing, I think, oh, our daughter started menstruating last week. But he says it in like the most matter-of-fact way, and it's like, why would you, like a normal person might deliver that information with a little bit more nuance, or like tell like a little story or something, and he just says it, and we don't think about it again.
Well, and then when Barry comes over to their house later, this is one of the first things the daughter tells him about herself as well. She announces that she's recently started menstruating. I think I think she uses the word to got my first period as opposed to menstruating. But nonetheless, it's still a very bizarre way to share information that people don't generally share broadly.
Yeah,
with
and like
people they don't know.
Barry Keoghan is like smoking in her room, and he just says like, "It's too late now. I'm addicted." Yeah, I laugh so hard.
Yeah, and it's a funny movie. It's a dark comedy, I think, and deliberately so, even though it's quite upsetting at some times. It reminded me a lot of Beau is Afraid, actually.
I got a big Todd Solondz vibe from this. I don't know if you've ever seen any of his movies, Chris. I know Patrick has at least seen Happiness, maybe Storytelling. What was the one he did with Paul Rubens? Not Year of the Dog. But yeah, his movies are like, they're kind of like the original Cringe Factor independent films, I feel like, where like everything is set up, everything is like very staged. The actor performances are very stilted, and the dialogue is just as like unnatural and uncomfortable as possible, almost in like a scientific manner.
And it's awful people doing awful things generally too.
It's impossible to tell how anyone's feeling, really, outside of a couple scenes, why they're saying the things they're saying. It kind of reminded me, so like black box theater, right? Where it's like there's no stage, there's no props, it's just the actors. This is like, it felt stagey to me, but like the inverse of black box theater, where there's everything except the actors are just people delivering the script, and there's not really a great deal of acting going on, and the script is also really weird. I don't know. Maybe a flawed analogy, but that's kind of what I thought of.
I can see what you mean, because like the production design is very kind of rigid and stately. Like there's clearly a lot of attention paid to it, and there are times when it's not quite like Hereditary level, or maybe even like Wes Anderson would be a good comparison, where like it's not quite like the setting is swallowing the actors, but it's pretty damn close to it. It dwarfs them. Like even I just rewatched like the end of it before we recorded, and Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman have this bed with these in like 10-foot posts on it during a scene that just like stand out in such a strange way that you do feel like the performances, the actors are just kind of starting to be dwarfed by or bleed into the scenery in an odd way.
I did get a vibe from all that production design though, like, and I was actually like sort of, before I realized that like the acting was what it is in this movie. I thought that, okay, Colin Farrell's just like a really calculating guy who's like really precise with his language and how he talks. And I was like seeing that in the production design, like, oh, the hospital's got all these straight lines, and like he wears like a grid pattern dress shirt, and there's a grid pattern on the outside of the hospital and stuff. And I was like putting up theories in my mind about like, what's this movie trying to say about structures and control and stuff. And it very well may be saying things about those, but that's not the main reason why everything's there. And it's a poetry type movie, and I didn't used to appreciate movies like this. I was a very plotty person, as you two can probably remember. I was like, give me Mark Wahlberg, give me a gun, let me see who's shooting who in what order, and that's a movie. And now I'm at that age and maturity where I can watch a movie that doesn't make a lot of sense, like this or The Matrix Revolutions, and I can appreciate the poetry of it. And well, Chris, I can appreciate how it's the vibe and sort of the themes and the questions it raises more than the plot.
I mean, without spoiling it, this movie features the literal exact opposite of what you just described. Give me a gun, give me a motive. Like, I'm so curious to hear, especially your thoughts in the spoiler room on some scenes from this, because they seem so like outside of your usual frame of reference.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like this means we need to revisit. What was the movie that was just like the girl skateboarding around the town from like EHMON Year One?
Anguish.
Anguish. Yeah. I knew it was a one-word thing. Yeah, Anguish. I feel like we should revisit that and see how that sits with 2023, Chris.
Yeah, I think if you go back and listen to some of our early episodes from 2017 or whatever, you'll probably hear some growth and change in what I look for in a movie or what impresses me in a movie these days. And I guess just watching a whole bunch of movies that are plotty gets boring. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm not happy about the strike, but I am pretty pleased that we get to take this journey, because I think we're learning a lot more about each other. We're getting exposed to things that are maybe a little bit more challenging in different ways than we're typically used to. Not to say that we don't see some great kind of off the beaten path movies on our normal EHMON journey, but yeah.
Well, I said last episode when we watched Beau is Afraid that I'd never seen a movie like Beau is Afraid, and I'm not sure I've ever seen a movie like The Killing of a Sacred Deer either. So it's kind of funny how just in a couple weeks my horizons have been broadened. And within and it's not like I'm going into French cinema or something that would really, push my horizons. It's like, this is stuff that presents it lures you in with the promise of a genre film, and then about 10 minutes into it you're like, hold on, what's going on? And you spend about a half hour trying to recalibrate. And that was both these last movies for me.
This actually reminds me of a reel I saw the other day that's like how A24 comes up with its movies, and it was just like a Mad Libs game, and the first line of the Mad Libs game is, okay, it looks like it's a blank movie, but it's actually a blank movie.
Yeah.
Which is apropos to your description of this movie.
But worth noting, as I think I or someone else might have on the previous episode of every A24 movie on Blu-ray, A24 doesn't usually make movies. Like this movie was like produced and financed independently, and A24 bought it. So they just it's kind of a strange confluence of like, they have a vibe they're looking for, and people independently of them just happen to be making those movies on a chance and getting scooped up by A24. And I find that so fascinating in and of itself.
Or making movies that they know will appeal to A24's sensibilities.
That may be happening more now, but probably not back in 2017. I feel like that wasn't, not necessarily early days for A24, but it still wasn't a household term.
Yeah.
I laughed a lot once I realized it was once I realized it was a funny movie that was safe to laugh at it. I was on this level and laughing a lot, and I like the sense of humor beyond sort of the stilted stuff and sort of the awkward lines of dialogue that are kind of obvious, there's like a lot of sight gags I thought were really funny. There's the daughter, we're introduced to her as she's like in a choir, and she's talking about all the improvement she's made in the choir and how she wants to move closer to the front of the choir. And then not long after that, there's a scene where she's singing by herself, and it's just the worst singing I've ever heard in my life.
God. When she's up against the tree trying to impress Martin.
Yeah, and like it took me a while because it's not like shot for comedy.
No.
It's just after you listen to her for like 20 seconds, you're like, wait a minute, she's fucking terrible at singing.
And she sings like an entire song too. I feel like she sings like a full 3-minute song.
I hope it was intentional. I hope it wasn't just the actress doing her best.
No, she's supposed to be. It's definitely supposed to be cringy. I don't know if she's like terrible, but she's not great.
Yeah, not great. It didn't strike me as bad though.
And little things like, you know, the dad, Colin Farrell, lecturing everybody about wearing helmets on their motorcycle, and they all talk about how they wear helmets on the motorcycle, and then you just see a shot of them riding the motorcycle, and neither of them have a helmet.
Yeah, of course.
When it seemed like the debate was like whether or not the driver had two helmets and or was sharing his helmet, but there's no helmet at all. Everyone's always lecturing people about smoking, and then you see every character smoking at some point.
Yeah, everybody except Bob, I think.
I think so.
Frankly, the name Bob is just a hilarious name for a 10-year-old in the year.
Oh, yeah. The girl had a funny name, too, I think.
It's Kim.
Kim.
Which is like
kind of funny.
Fine. Kim and Bob seem like, out of decade names for two kids.
Yeah.
And Bob, let's just say it. I'll tip my hand here. You know, possible Spirit of J award nominee.
Oh, well,
thinking about it. Okay. I'm thinking about it. We got a couple more months left, but I'm gonna
he does have some Mr. Banku energy.
Yeah.
The funniest thing in the movie to me, and I agree that it is blackly funny in many places, was so the Barry Keoghan character invites Colin Farrell's character over to his house for dinner, where his mother is played by fucking Alicia Silverstone, which you don't see her in much anymore.
I didn't recognize her.
I would just love to know kind of the casting conversations that went into that, which she fucking kills it as this very awkward mom who is trying to flirt with Colin Farrell. It's unclear if she's like kind of in on her son's demented scheme to fuck with Colin Farrell and his family, or if she's just kind of a loose cannon on her own. But she plays this hilariously awkward scene of flirtation so well, kind of culminating in the line, "You can't leave until you've tasted my tart," because she baked a caramel tart for him. It's such an awkward scene, and I laughed my ass off at that line.
I wrote Alicia Silverstone with 3 exclamation points and an underline because I did not remember her being in this movie. And then the next thing I wrote was the tart line. I mean, I think if I was sipping a drink, I spit it out.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Oh, yeah. She starts like commenting on his hands, which become a recurring topic of conversation, how beautiful and clean his hands are. And then like sucking on his thumb, I think. Like he pulls away and she like is fully latched onto his thumb. Like he has to like yank his thumb out of her mouth. It's so weird and good.
A lot of this movie makes you uncomfortable.
Oh yeah.
In like a
all of it.
Yeah.
Literally every frame.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much stuff like it had been so long since I'd seen it. I couldn't remember if I had seen it. So like I forgot really what was going to happen in this movie, and just the whole kind of plot thread with Colin Farrell going to meet this weird boy, like it could have turned into something sexual for all I knew going into it. I mean, there's just a simmering tension of like, what is going on? Why are they meeting? Why isn't he talking to anybody about this? But we never really see anything intimate happen. They're just sitting at a diner talking about, watch straps.
I'm
but it
sure
feels like he's about to bone him. Like,
yeah, and that's all was very uncomfortable for me, and I think deliberately so, because like we find out like the reason they're getting together is fucked up, but the way they reveal the information late, it gives you all this time, and the way they stage things, you imagine something way more fucked up.
Yeah.
And they let you do that. And you're just like, why is Colin Farrell like giving like expensive watches to this like 16-year-old boy? And not telling his coworker or his wife about their relationship.
And they're like meeting in like, just like a nondescript diner, like a parking garage, or like Martin is insistent on coming over for dinner, and Colin Farrell's like, oh fuck, well I guess I have to invite him, because he could blow my cover. We don't know what the what the cover is for at that point. It could be almost anything.
So I guess I want to offer a counterpoint to that. I found this to be kind of lacking in tension. I mean, I did theorize that maybe there was a sexual affair going on between these two early on, but I feel like at the very least what's actually going on is hinted at pretty soon in the movie. And I don't know, maybe 45 minutes in, Barry actually like lays out his plan and confirms his motivation. But also like he lays it out and basically tells you what's going to happen for the rest of the movie. Like there are hardly surprises from there. It's just kind of the horror of watching how it plays out. And that
it's like
also felt like of a piece with kind of the tone of the whole thing to me too, is that there's almost this whole thing feels almost inevitable from early in the film.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you that I don't feel like it's a spoiler as to why he and Colin Farrell are meeting up and how they were connected, but I won't say it unless others disagree. But that scene where he lays out his motives is like the most efficient info dump I've ever seen in a movie, to a comical effect. Like everything, like every other piece of dialogue in this, he's just like, okay, this is what's happened. This is what's happened. This is what's going to happen. There's nothing.
I'm going to say it as quickly as I can.
Yeah,
he does.
Yeah.
Well, it's like when you're writing a screenplay and you're doing a first draft or a treatment, and you're just writing what the characters need to say in this scene to each other, and then you're going to go back and you're going to make it artsy and you make a scene out of it later, but you're like, this is the information that we need to convey, and we're not going to have any subtext or anything. We're just going to write, and then they ended up just making that.
Yeah. I would agree with Patrick in that it is. I felt it was mostly tension free, except until that point, when Martin kind of lays down the law. But it's a movie. It's almost like an anti-thriller because again, the dialogue is delivered so like succinctly, efficiently, and like the camera doesn't move a whole lot, and yet there's this like booming, pounding, bombastic score, that's like, you're really supposed to be freaked out right now. but you don't know why, and you're also not. And I found that at times amusing and at other times kind of vexing. Like, what are you trying to do in a movie? Like, are you a horror movie? Are you a thriller? Are you not? In the end, I mostly enjoyed that kind of weird interplay of tonality, though.
I think anti-thriller is the best way to describe this movie.
Anti-birth.
Yeah. Because it's like you wouldn't have to do much to make this a very conventional thriller. Yeah. It reminded me of other thrillers as I was watching it, but they just make the weird directorial choice so many times that it is very tensionless. And I think we might have said it in a confusing way, like the tension. There's not like tension like a thriller, but it is a movie that just kind of puts you in an uncomfortable and awkward space a lot. And it's like, it's up to you to get through this. That's more what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It leaves you in the tension of discomfort of just being around just squirrely characters who you just don't want to be in their company for pretty much the whole film.
At almost no point, and I'm not going to say at no point because there were a couple scenes that I think are a little more dramatic and thrilling. At almost no point did I really care what happened to any of these characters. But I thought I was riveted though.
Yeah.
Oh, same. I mean, because yeah, again, even though the dialogue is so kind of lifeless, there's something going on with the performances that I found very captivating. I mean, Barry Keoghan, like as far as I can tell, can do no wrong. He's in so many movies at this point that I love, even at his young age. Even though he's kind of like leaning against the vibe of the words that he's saying, it's somehow more captivating and somehow more menacing. I mean, kind of same with Nicole Kidman and Colin Farrell too. There are scenes where they're having arguments, and you wouldn't know it if you watched it with the sound and the subtitles off. You know what I mean? It's just it's so hard to describe.
Yeah, Keoghan blew me away in this, and I've enjoyed him in other movies, especially like Banshees of Inisherin. And he's just so good at playing characters that just ain't quite right, and different variations on that. But this was so fascinating because he so plausibly plays just kind of an awkward young man, like a socially stunted teenager who wants to interact with adults but can't quite pull it off. And then it's so much more disarming and disorienting when he then slips into kind of like supervillain, like revealing his fucked up, potentially like almost supernatural plan, because there are not like logical explanations for what ends up happening to this family.
No.
It's such a strange singular character that he creates in this.
Yeah, they're just cursed, and it's like the mechanics of it. It's like a Greek myth.
It is literally an adaptation of a Greek myth.
Oh, is it?
I thought I read that, yeah, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the myth that Kim's teacher references her writing a paper about in the scene where Colin Farrell, that's a fucked up scene, goes to talk to her principal. The myth of Iphigenia is what this is based on, which basically the idea is Agamemnon killed a sacred deer that was sacred to the god Artemis, and then had to sacrifice one of his children to make up for that. And depending on various versions of the story, I think there's one kind of version of the story that is not the original, where he actually kills a deer and tricks the gods into thinking he did kill one of his kids. But generally, he kills one of his kids to atone, I think, is the idea.
I was waiting the whole movie to see a sacred deer.
Oh, boy.
Guess it wasn't folk horror.
Well, I feel like we, like Steven said, I don't even know how much there are spoilers to this, but we actually have talked around the main spoilers pretty well at this point. So
I agree.
I think it might be a good juncture to just review this and then get into the meat of it.
Yeah, I agree. Would you like to begin?
Sure. I'll give this a Q, which I guess I feel kind of bad about in a way, because this is really well done. There's incredible vision behind it. Anything that feels awkward or uncomfortable about it is an intentional choice and a well-made and well-executed one. But and this is kind of my problem with some of his other movies too that I've seen, is I didn't know what the fucking point was in the end. It is so unpleasant to watch, and I didn't take anything really away from it thematically, and it's hard for me to recommend on that level. So yeah, I'll give it a Q. How about you, Steven?
It's also a Q for me for largely the same reasons. I don't remember if I enjoyed it the first time I saw it, because I don't remember watching it, but I did have fun with it this time around. And I would recommend it to certain folks based on their taste. It's like, oh, if you like The Lobster, here's the same director doing something that's a little more akin to a horror movie, but not quite. Like there's a crowd for this, but I ultimately don't know what. I don't like to say I don't know what it means, but it didn't really mean anything to me. I spent some time thinking about the end and rewatched it before we recorded, and I really couldn't pull anything out of it. Yeah, kind of the definition of a Stephen Hewitt. Chris.
I agree with pretty much everything both of you just said. I'm going to reluctantly give it a view it. It was good and it held my attention. It's weird. It's really weird. But like I said, like I appreciate that I haven't seen anything like this. And I thought it was really funny. And I do wish that it had, for as much of like sort of a poetry vibe it has, like I've been saying, it doesn't seem to have that much to say, but it might. I don't know. Maybe I just need to think about it some more. I expected after I watched this movie that I would be thinking it over and like pulling out threads from it in my own head for a while, but I really kind of haven't thought about it much at all, save for recording this episode. So I'm kind of in one eye, out the other, but it was not a bad use of 2 hours for me. If you've heard this episode and it sounds like something you're interested in, check it out. But there's going to be a lot of people who want a more conventional story. If they're going to spend 2 hours watching a thriller, want their like heart to pulse a little bit and get like invested in the drama, and that's probably not going to happen here. You're going to be like, who is this weird self-indulgent director and who does he think he is? But if I were talking to myself a few days ago before I saw it, I'd say view it. All right. Well, with that said, we're going to go down to the spoiler room and spoil all the twists and turns of The Killing of a Sacred Deer. Before we do that, let me remind you that you can find us in between episodes on social media at EHMONcast, EHMON cast. We're on Instagram. I think we're still on Twitter or X or whatever it is. We still got the handle there, and we're on Facebook and Instagram. I said one of those already. I forget which one. And we also have a website, everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com. It's in a state of disrepair, but it won't be forever. You can see a list of episodes we've watched, and you can go to our merch store where we sell t-shirts and things of that nature with artwork on them that, and the profits from those shirts go to our pockets and not to charity. Also, most importantly, we have a Discord group that is very lively. We like talking to the fans there about whatever we're watching and whatever you're watching. So find the link to that in the show notes and join our Discord community if you haven't already. Oh, and rate and review the show on your podcast platform. It helps people find the show.
Can I say something about the Discord real quick?
Yes.
I had a book club on there, and I took a hiatus for the summer so I could enjoy the Michigan summer and also read 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I did not do that. It turns out if I don't have a book club running, I don't read. So that's going to be coming back soon. I'll probably do a little poll or something and, find something that's a reasonable length that's got some Halloween vibes to it to get it back up and running. So stay tuned.
Disappointed that you didn't read 11/22/63.
I mean, I will. It just didn't happen this summer.
I'll be your book club for that.
We'll see.
All right. Well, that's all we got to say before we go down to the spoiler room and spoil everything about The Killing of a Sacred Deer. So go watch the movie now if that's what you want to do, or stick around and we'll be back in just a few seconds.
Let's go kill this sacred deer.
Welcome back. We're down here in the spoiler room to spoil everything about Yorgos Lanthimos' masterpiece, The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we can say right out the gate, we got to clear the air on what's going on between Steve is his name, Colin Farrell, and Martin.
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin. So I see what Yorgos was laying down there. Yeah, so Steve, I almost actually just called him Steve Martin. Steve, cardiovascular surgeon. He was performing an operation on Martin's father, and his father died. And Steve doesn't take the blame for it. He says a surgeon is never responsible for a death, but the anesthesiologist can certainly kill someone during a surgery.
That's just another hilarious bit.
Oh, it's so
then
good.
Then we hear from the anesthesiologist. He's like, no, an anesthesiologist can never kill a patient. It's
the
just
surgeon is always responsible.
The surgeon is always responsible. And it turns out this surgeon, Steve, had a couple of drinks before he performed the surgery, though we're told that was commonplace at the time, which I believe because I have heard stories of of people who have been in surgery and have seen like an old-fashioned on the table. This was like 20 years ago.
Like they woke up under the knife?
No, like they just could tell before they even went under that the surgeon was drunk. He'd been drinking.
Oh, my takeaway from that line was just that was common for Steve at the time, not that was like common in his field in general. Because he used to, it's referenced earlier in the film. That's what I was talking about before when I say it's hinted at what happened here, because the fact that he has quit drinking, and there's some reference to, I think that he used to drink kind of heavily, comes up rather early in the movie, which was what kind of clued me in pretty early as to what had happened with Martin's dad.
Well, in either case, that seems to be what happened, and it seems to be that it doesn't matter who was responsible. Martin has chosen his target, and he is going to make Steve and his family suffer the consequences of killing his father.
I'm still thinking about the horror of waking up under the knife and you're paralyzed still, but you see everybody's just drinking around. The nurses are doing shots. A beer bong.
I can't. I'm baffled by this. 20 years ago, doctors would just drink in the OR.
I'm not saying that all doctors would, but that I know one person who said that she spent a lot of time in hospitals throughout her life, and she said that she has seen it before.
I don't want a nervous doctor.
No,
I want a confident doctor.
I want a steady hand. If he's got the DTs, have a drink.
Yeah, I want a steady hand, and I want someone who believes he can save my life.
Holy
not some teetotaler with imposter syndrome. Come on.
I want the same thing with my airline captains, you know?
But if you're looking and you see like if he's drinking an old fashioned, that's one thing. But if he's drinking like Parrot Head Lager, rest in peace, you know you might have a problem.
Jesus fuck.
Anyway, but yeah, Barry Martin's philosophy to get even, well, you know, it's not explained. He's just magic. There's just a curse that he's put on by virtue of having his father killed by Colin Farrell. He says, well, you know, you killed a member of my family, and so now you have to kill a member of your family for us to be even. And he says that his 2 kids and his wife are going to become paralyzed, which the boy already is at that point. His legs don't work anymore. He says they're going to become paralyzed. Then they're going to stop eating. They're going to refuse all food until they starve. Then they're going to start bleeding from the eyes. And then they're going to die. And
there's your movie.
That's your movie.
All of those things wind up happening. And Colin Farrell eventually kills a kid to stop it.
I always like a movie that because that's what he has to do. He has to decide who in his family is going to die to stop the curse, or they'll all die. Yeah. I like a movie that calls it shot like this, and is like, this is what's going to happen, and then it happens.
Well, it's great because almost, at least I almost couldn't believe it. I'm like, this isn't a fantasy. Like, how is this going to happen? And
Colin Farrell believes it.
It just
well, he doesn't believe it, but then he's like, eat this muffin, and all his kids are like, fuck you, Dad. And
donut. Yeah. He tries to cram a donut into his son's face as the son refuses food. That's another horrifying but also funny scene.
Yeah, just dark comedy. It's really dark comedy.
I like seeing Patrick, we were talking about Force Majeure recently, and this has kind of similar vibes to that. I like seeing a buttoned up, successful, kind of wealthy family just unravel. I like just seeing it all fall apart, all of the comforts and the walls they've built around themselves, and suddenly nothing is safe. That's fun for me. Eat the rich.
I did feel bad for them. I mean, this is just a fucked up thing to happen to anyone. And I'm thinking particularly of some of these scenes where the kids are just dragging themselves around the house because their legs don't work. At one point, the daughter has clearly mastered the art of like going downstairs using only her arms while her legs are paralyzed. And it is funny, like you guys are laughing, and it did strike me as funny, but at the same time, it's so sad and upsetting too. I mean, honestly, this is where the Beau is Afraid kind of line comes back in for me, where it just exists right on that tightrope between deeply disturbing and also funny.
And I love it. That's my default sense of humor.
Same.
So Beau is Afraid and this have worked for me very well as comedies. But yeah, it is sad though, because I mean the kids are pretty damn charming in this movie as far as kids go. I'm famously not one for kids in movies, but these kids are cute.
Yeah, I mean Bob is kind of a little shit, but he's charming, and Kim seems like a decent kid who's like rebelling against her parents eventually for pretty solid reasons. So I especially felt bad for them. And Anna is, I don't know, the Nicole Kidman character is certainly not as fucked up as Stephen, but not a pleasant person. The family ranking for me goes Kim, Bob, Anna, Stephen being way down at the bottom.
Yeah, I would support that rating. And then Barry Keoghan Martin above all of them. Right?
I mean, fuck him too. He's a terrible person as well. There's no like winners in this. There's no redeeming characters in this movie to me.
That I think lends to the comedy too, right? Just the fact like all these people just kind of suck on some level. I had a soft spot for Bob, but I feel like Bob even does some kind of annoying shit.
Yeah, he's a little shit.
This might be a stretch, but I thought that Nicole Kidman was channeling some of her other roles, specifically Eyes Wide Shut.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Dude, that shot of her in front of the mirror, that has to be a fucking Eyes Wide Shut reference.
It has to be. And also when she's just like writhing around on the bed, like sort of like passively arguing with Colin Farrell, which, I mean, Eyes Wide Shut's like kind of a similar story too, about a doctor, and you know, he's got everything all set up and he kind of goes on a little morality play.
Well, or when she's having very weird sex with Colin Farrell, like Colin Farrell's kink is for her to do what she describes as general anesthetic, where she just pretends to be either out cold or dead in lingerie or naked while he presumably has sex with her.
Yeah, I think he just masturbates, doesn't he?
It kind of cuts. I think it's pretty implied that he's about to actually like have sex with her the first time it happens. Although later in the movie, it's pretty funny too, because things are kind of falling apart between them. And so she strips down and just like sprawls out lifelessly across the bed as if like presenting herself to him. And he just turns off the light and ignores her.
She's like, make love, not war. And then he's like, let's not do any of it. Let's go to bed.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris.
But also she kind of acts like a Stepford wife. So I thought of her in that role, because like so much of this the dialogue is about like who's watering the flowers, and like you see her out like watering the flowers in the middle of the night when the kids come home and stuff, and just like sort of her like role is to be the one who like maintains the household or delegate the responsibility of maintaining the household even as the kids are dying. So
what's that term people are using now where like you act like a 50s housewife? You know what I'm talking about?
Trad wife?
Yes. Yeah. She's a total hashtag trad wife.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Martin's shot call for a minute, because the other interesting thing about the way this all plays out is the way it kind of encourages you to seek a logical explanation for everything that goes down here. There's a fixation with lemonade. There's a lot of talk about lemonade and about food early in the film, where, you know, as these horrible illnesses start to affect the family, you go, oh, okay, so how's this guy doing this? Is he like sneaking poison into the lemonade or something? And that is all just kind of thrown out the window eventually. It's basically red herring, and there's no attempt to explain this, and it only becomes more sort of implausible, his control over this scenario. You know, I mean, truly like basically godly control over this family, and there's no explanation for it, which is really a fascinating choice and certainly makes it more terrifying.
Yeah.
I thought of that too. Like, I was looking for an explanation because he gives the kids keychains sort of out of the blue, which was also a funny scene because he's like, "You're a singer. I got you a keychain of a music note, but it's the treble clef. It's not a note."
I didn't even think of that.
I didn't catch that either.
Just like little sight gags like that.
And then he's like, "And Bob, I got you a smiley face keychain."
Right.
Like Kim's is very like sort of tailored to her interests, and he just gets the other kid a smiley face.
Oh my God. I got the biggest laugh out of him giving her the MP3 player.
Oh, all the conversation about the MP3 player is hilarious.
I don't know what's wrong with me. I've lost 2 MP3 players in the last week. Can I have yours when you die?
or like the very first time that gets brought up, she's like, "Is that my MP3 player?" And he's like, "No, it's mine." She's like, "Can I borrow it?" And he's like, "No, you're gonna lose it like you lost yours or something." Anyway, all good stuff. But yeah, any attempt you might have or theory you might have about how he's controlling the situation kind of goes out the window by the time he's talking on the phone with Kim from the hospital parking lot and is able to make her better. And she gets out of bed and walks to the window to see him and is able to walk back, and then her legs don't work anymore. So it's just complete fantasy at that. Unless he's got the nano machines that Krychek put in Skinner in that one episode. He can just turn it on and off. There's no scientific explanation for this.
But this eventually ends up going full prisoners, and Steve kidnaps Martin and holds him prisoner in the basement, beats the shit out of him, shoots him in the leg, trying to wrest back control of this situation.
And then Martin takes a bite out of his own arm.
Movie.
Yeah.
Martin takes a bite out of his own arm, pretty horrific, and he says something like, "Don't you get it? It's a metaphor."
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I thought was funny, but also effective. I mean, he's basically saying whatever you do to me, it's not going to be as bad as what's coming to you, so I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
I'm still getting my revenge, bitch.
Well, a metaphor for what, though, I guess? I felt like that was almost a kind of nihilistic thesis statement from Lanthimos himself, basically saying, there is no metaphor here. This is just about
maybe.
I mean, I kind of tying back to what we were saying before about how it feels like, there's a lot of well-crafted vibes here, but what the fuck does it all mean in the end? Well, I felt like it was just kind of flippant, metaphor. I'm not going to tell you what for, because it's really not one. There is no real significance to this. There is no meaning to this.
Well, he's kind of obsessed with this idea of having that justice has to mirror the situation, right? Like you killed a member of my family, therefore you have to kill a member of your family. It's like whatever happens to me is going to happen to you, etc. So
Very
I think
Old
that's how I
Testament,
read the biting thing, where he's like, "Oh, I bit you. That was wrong of me. Now I bite myself, just like you're going to have to bite yourself when you kill your kid."
Yeah, there's an interesting line related to that too, where doesn't he say something along the lines of, I'm not saying it's right, but it's the closest thing I can think of to justice, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically there's a succession of very fucked up scenes where all the characters are just forced into hilariously fucked up decisions to try and figure out how to resolve this situation, because even once in prison, Martin doesn't give a shit. He's not going to change his plan. He says, "Kill me and you're basically killing 4 people. You better dig a big hole, because all 3 of your family who have been poisoned or whatever's happened to them are going to die."
Which is just some hard-boiled shit to say when you're tied to a chair.
I laughed so hard at that. You better dig a big hole.
Yeah.
His delivery is fucking genius.
It's so good.
And again, all the logistics or all the stuff you would see in a normal thriller about how are they going to get away with imprisoning and murdering this guy? How are they going to get away with killing one of their kids? How is he going to get away with burying his whole family in the backyard if it comes down to that? Not important. there's no law enforcement coming for our heroes.
Oh
in
yeah,
this movie.
there's no thought of calling the police in this movie. Like, I mean, even so, I mean, in real life, what would happen? You know, I mean, like, okay, I guess it comes out that you had 2 drinks, and you know what's going to happen to the doctor in the end of that situation? Probably still fucking nothing.
Nothing.
Like,
it's never going to be an investigation or anything.
Yeah, yeah. Like, this is, again, as Chris said before, like kind of just pure fantasy.
But like that's
the same kind of law enforcement you get in a Greek myth. Like they don't say, "Officer, I saw a woman with snakes in her hair turning people to stone." It happens.
Yeah.
Well, and like I don't remember how long ago it was in the narrative, but like the father died some time ago, right? It's been like a couple of years, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's like that's done with. But I do understand in kind of the fantasy nightmare logic of this movie, like once you start associating with this kid, and once things start happening to your family, and it seems like somebody's going to die, well, you don't want to call the police because, one, you can't explain it. You're going to sound crazy, you know, trying to explain, like, okay, I've been trying to appease this kid. His father was my patient. He died. And now my son can't walk, and my daughter can't walk, and there's blood coming out of their eyes, and they won't eat anything, you know? So they are kind of trapped in, like, a nightmare that they just have no control over. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed that sort of like almost kind of dream logic of it, I guess.
And it's interesting that like Colin Farrell's character like feels guilty, like even though he says he's not responsible, he feels guilty. He stopped in between the death and when the movie starts, he stopped drinking. He doesn't drink at all anymore.
Yeah.
And like he's obviously trying to look after, if not take care of, this kid as like a surrogate father to atone for what he did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't read that in particular that way. I read more he was scared of the kid and trying to protect himself. I didn't get any real sense of concern for the kid.
Oh, in the beginning? It's hard to tell because there's no like love coming across in the line deliveries, but taking them out to the dinner, giving them a watch and stuff, like it seemed like surrogate. It seemed like I was watching Manchester by the Sea.
Interesting, because I think I was my read on it was closer to Patrick's, where I felt like this is a desperate man who is doing something that makes him deeply uncomfortable, that he has to hide from his family because he is terrified of what this kid might do to him.
Trying to placate him.
I think he was just ashamed of why he was hanging out with him, and like doesn't want him at the hospital because he's here because I killed his dad in the OR.
Well, that's what's so fascinating about this movie, right? Is there in almost any interaction, there are multiple ways that you can perceive it because of the liminal space that the line deliveries exist in.
Yeah. Well, I loved, and we hinted at this scene before, but again, kind of the family ends up making some very fucked up decisions as they try and figure out how to navigate this situation once they do have Martin in the basement, and that clearly still is not affecting anything because Martin doesn't give a shit. When Colin Farrell goes to the kid's principal to basically kind of attempt to question him to figure out which of his kids is, to use his own word, best. Like he's asking, what subjects are they good at? How are their grades? Yada, yada, which is also hilarious just in the context that he's their father and he should already know these things and not have to go to the principal to be like, well, how are their grades? What subjects are they good at?
It's so good.
And the principal, also brilliant piece of casting, like what an everyman ass actor, just this guy feels like, just your average school principal. And he's not giving Colin Farrell what he needs in this scene. He keeps saying, well, they're both very, very good. They're very talented. They've done great work in class. And Colin Farrell finally gets down to just saying, well, which of them is best?
Yeah, and of course the principal declines to answer that question, but it's so funny that he's using that as his moral barometer for which one he's going to kill.
Yeah.
But another dark joke of the movie, I think. So basically this culminates with, I guess, Colin Farrell deciding he has to kill a member of his family. At this point, like Bob's eye, which I thought, I was not expecting that much blood to come out of Bob's eyes. Let me tell you, that was pretty funny. He puts them all in the living room with bags over their head, and he just spins around like a sloppier version of Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo with a hunting rifle, and just takes wild shots through his living room until he hits somebody.
Yeah, because he's pulled a mask over his own eyes, so he can't see.
Oh, right, so he can't see. Yeah, he's trying to do this completely blind. And he ends up killing Bob, the young boy, the first one to get sick.
After he hits nobody for the first 2 shots,
Yeah.
of course, because he's just dizzying himself up and taking random shots in the dark in his living room. It's such a... I mean, again, it's another very fucked up, but very weirdly funny scene.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he kills Bob, and it's like, I think it's like a dark joke where, like, of all of them, Bob, I think, is like the most innocent person in the whole movie.
Absolutely.
Like, I can't recall an
he's a
example of
sacred
Bob.
deer.
Yeah, I can't recall an example of Bob doing anything weird or mean or selfish or anything that's just not like normal, as opposed to everybody else. But of course, he's the one who has to pay the penalty for everything.
Well, I don't think he's the sacred deer, though. If you're mapping this onto the original myth, the Martin's dad is the sacred deer, because the Agamemnon in the story has to kill a kid to atone for having killed the sacred deer. So
But didn't you
Martin's
say
dad is
that?
the deer?
Didn't you say that Agamemnon might have tried to trick the gods by killing a deer and saying he killed one of his family members, though?
Right, but I don't think that maps onto this because he's not necessarily tricking them by killing.
Well, I thought it was cute. Okay, that's all. I was mostly being facetious.
Oh, gotcha.
But the curse is lifted, and I mean, I think it goes from there. Bob's killed pretty unceremoniously, and then I think the next thing we see, what do we see next? Do we see anything before they go to the diner?
No.
No.
You just see him back in the diner where is it the same? It's the same diner, right?
Yeah.
Where Colin Farrell takes Martin, but now it's him out with his family, like the end of The Sopranos. They're eating in the diner, and Martin's at the counter looking at them. And it's a little, I mean, they have a pretty normal dinner, and then they leave, and Martin's stuck staring at them walking out the door. And it's a little bit poignant. You get the sense that Martin didn't get everything he wanted out of this.
No, he didn't get the girl. His dad's still dead, and they're a happy family because they can still have another child.
That's what Nicole Kidman said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she rules herself out of the possible kill-ins at the end because she says, if we kill one of the kids, I can have another kid, which is fucking hilarious too.
It's so good.
It goes into detail, but we can do in vitro fertilization.
Yeah.
Man. God bless all the actors involved in this. It must have been, I don't think just any actor could understand the assignment for this movie.
I was thinking that the whole time, and at least Colin Farrell has worked with Yorgos twice. Mm-hmm. He was the star of The Lobster, and he was fantastic. And I didn't ultimately like that movie all that much in the end. Like, there's an hour of it that just kind of goes nowhere for me. But he is so funny doing something that is so specific that I don't know how you could put it into words as a direction for an actor.
Mm-hmm. I don't know either.
He is consistently surprising to me, especially over the last 10 years or so. And I think, honestly, it's because I, was growing up in the aughts and, kind of had him pegged as just like the pretty boy. But he is fucking talented, and it makes so many of his more recent roles extra effective for me because I underestimate him and then he knocks me out.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because I hear that a lot, and I totally understand why. I've never underestimated him. I'm more like, why isn't this guy in more like leading roles in mainstream movies? And it turns out he's not interested in that. I think
he likes the weird shit. Yeah,
he likes the weird shit. I mean, even back to the first thing I saw him in was probably In Bruges. Where he's playing. He is a pretty boy in that movie, but he's playing so like against type. He's playing just like a despicable dumbass character. It's kind of like a Kevin Kline with his mustache on sort of role. And from then on, I'm just fascinated to see everything that I'll see movies just because he's in them, even if I'm not familiar with the other talent. Mm-hmm. But that said, how is he in The Batman? Because I know you guys have both seen that, and I haven't.
I don't like The Batman in general. But
it's not a great movie, but he does what he's supposed to do very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
It just bothers me because it feels so much like stunt casting. It's like, Colin Farrell's pretty, and we put him in a fat suit and makeup and whatever. Amazing!
And you wouldn't even know
can't
it's
even
him.
tell it's Colin Farrell. Yeah, exactly. And that's what you're supposed to think the whole time is, wow, you can't even tell it's Colin Farrell. And it's, I don't know. I mean, he does his job. But again, I think it's another example of just like he likes to do weird shit. And he's like, sure, you want me to play this character that is about as far from like my physical type as possible. Slap me in some crazy ass prosthetics and
have me fight
I'm on
Batman.
screen for 5-10 minutes. Sure, let's do it.
Yeah,
I think it fits into his set of interests. I could spend way too long talking about what I don't like about the Batman.
It's kind of a Johnny Depp move, at least from my perspective. Yeah.
But even beyond Colin Farrell, like we got kid actors in this movie. How do you explain this assignment to kids of that age who have done like silly kid family stuff prior to this? You know?
Yeah,
crazy.
Yeah,
it's a weird assignment for everybody for sure. But
I don't know. Stray thought about this movie though, because I did put this in my notes. It is an interesting pairing with Beau is Afraid, because I felt like there were a lot of similarities to the Nathan Lane, Amy Ryan chapter of Beau is Afraid in this. I mean,
oh yeah,
with the medical professional, with the kind of like fucked up dysfunctional family that are all behaving in this sort of surrealistic fashion. I don't have anywhere to go with that, but it did kind of
similar setting and similar sense of humor.
Similar sense of humor, and it's just interesting looking at two movies that came out 5 years apart. One produced by A24, this one, and one financed by A24, Beau is Afraid. And I don't know. I guess they haven't lost their touch.
Well, that's your movie.
That's your movie.
Well, what A24 movie are we watching next, Chris?
I don't think it's my turn to pick, is it?
Yeah, because
it is.
I picked, and then we did basically the wheel with the auction.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I'm unprepared. Give me a minute here. But while we were recording, we got this little message on Facebook from a listener who said, the best thing that happened to me and my boyfriend in a while is that you guys switched from Netflix to A24 movies.
I knew it. I knew the fans would fucking eat this shit up. Oh, that's delightful to hear.
But don't get too excited, because we're going back. We're going back someday.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, let's be clear. We hope to go back as soon as possible, if only so that the strike can be resolved and people can, get paid what they deserve and get the benefits they deserve, and that, Hollywood can stop being and the streamers can stop being so fucking stupid and greedy. But
really, this is
in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, really, this is the primary bargaining chip on the table right now in this strike is our podcast format.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm going to pick a movie that I think you both have seen, maybe multiple times, but I haven't, but I own it on Blu-ray and have had it on Blu-ray for like, years, and I need an excuse to finally watch it. We're going to watch The Lighthouse.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, yay.
By Robert Eggers of The Witch fame.
And The Northman fame. With Nicole Kidman. It's all coming full circle.
Nice.
I'm excited. The Lighthouse. Yeah.
And there's a prominent reference to a lobster in The Lighthouse. So.
Oh, right.
Another little connection there. It's the shared universe.
I'm excited. I have some preconceptions, I think, of what this movie will be like and what it'll be about, just because it's been sort of in the cultural space for several years, but I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, that'll be in 2 weeks. We'll be watching A24 produced The Lighthouse. on every A24 movie on Blu-ray, and I will be watching this on Blu-ray.
You know what? I might watch it on Blu-ray with you.
Oh, well, you're welcome. Okay. All right, but until then, like I said, check us out on social media at EHMONcast. Join our Discord. Tell us what you thought of The Killing of a Sacred Deer. And we will see you in 2 weeks, right? So for every horror movie on Netflix, I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick.
And I've been Steven.
See you later.